After my children put me in a rest home, I purchased the facility and changed their visiting hour. I never imagined my life would come to this. It started with a conversation I wasn't meant to overhear. I was in the hallway, quietly waiting for my tea to steep in the small kitchenette by the dining room. I had just moved into Rosefield Manor a week earlier. They said it was temporary. My son, Tom, had smiled when he said it, rubbing my shoulder and calling me Mom, in that careful tone people use when they're trying to manipulate you gently. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. But that morning, while waiting for the kettle to finish boiling, I heard my daughter-in-law's voice just around the corner in the lounge by the staff desk. She thinks she's here to rest while we figure things out, Lena said, her voice full of smug certainty. Honestly, it's a blessing. The house is finally quiet, and I can rearrange the living room without hearing her gasp every 5 seconds. Then came Tom's voice. My son. Yeah, and now that we sold the house, we can pay off the credit cards and maybe take that trip to Cabo. I stood still. My fingers clutched the edge of the counter. Sold the house? My house? They hadn't told me anything. They brought me here after a minor fall in the garden. I had scraped my knee and twisted my wrist. Nothing serious. Nothing that required being removed from my home. They called it just a little rest, some time to recover. I was naive enough to believe them. But that's the thing about getting older. People stop speaking to you like you have a right to know what's happening. They speak over you, around you, like you're just a chore to manage. I didn't move for a long time. I let the tea kettle whistle until a nurse came by and shut it off, muttering about memory lapses. I didn't correct her. What was the point? That afternoon, I sat quietly in the activity room pretending to read a book while my mind reeled. The betrayal wasn't just the house. It was the ease with which they'd made the decision, like it was nothing, like I was nothing. My room at Rosefield was small, with beige wallpaper and thin curtains that barely kept out the light. The bed creaked every time I shifted my weight. There was a single chair by the window and a plastic dresser that stuck whenever I opened it. It wasn't home, and it never would be. But I kept smiling when the nurses checked on me. I thanked them when they brought my meals. I nodded politely when the director, Mr. Collins, introduced himself and said he hoped I'd feel at home soon. And when Tom visited that Friday with Lena and the kids, I sat there in that cracked vinyl chair and acted like I was grateful. Tom handed me a container of leftovers from their lunch out. He smiled and said, "Didn't want to forget you, Ma." Then he turned to Lena and whispered, "We were stuffed. Figured we'd save this for her." I ate it cold later that night, chicken tenders and mashed potatoes. I didn't cry. I just chewed slowly, tasting every bite like it might be my last piece of dignity. That weekend, they didn't come. On Monday, the receptionist told me my name had been removed from the priority visitor list. Visits would be limited to Sundays, for staff coordination, she said. No one else from the family called, not even to pretend. The days at Rosefield blurred into one another. Morning meds, cafeteria breakfast, television in the lounge, bingo, repeat. I kept my head down. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for anything. But I watched. I saw how the staff behaved when they thought no one noticed. I listened to their gossip. I heard about the financial trouble the place was in. Budget cuts, unpaid suppliers, threats of shutting down. I asked quiet questions. I took notes in my head, and on the third week when I was alone in the visiting room, a little girl tiptoed in and sat across from me. I knew her instantly. My granddaughter, Emily. She looked different, older, quieter, but the eyes were still the same. She opened her backpack, took out a coloring book, and smiled. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," she whispered. I didn't speak for a moment. I was afraid if I did, I'd break down. "I missed you," she said. "Mom says you're Better off here. I looked at her hands. Small fingers, bitten nails. No one was taking care of her either. We didn't talk much. She just sat and colored, and I watched her. When she left, she hugged me so tightly I felt her heart beating against mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window and stared at the dark parking lot. And that's when the thought came. I remembered the trust fund Henry had left me. My late husband was many things, but disorganized wasn't one of them. We had a private account no one knew about. I had left it untouched for years, letting it grow, and now I had a reason to use it. The next morning, I called the number I had memorized but never dialed. Mr. Richter, Henry's old attorney. He was still alive, still practicing, still sharp. He remembered me instantly. "I need to make a purchase," I said. "What kind of purchase?" "A facility, a care home." A pause. Then, "Tell me what you need." By the end of the week, I had my name on the list of bidders for Rosefield Manor, through a holding company. No one knew it was me, and the following Monday I received confirmation that the offer had been accepted. I owned the building where my family left me to rot, but I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just sat quietly in my room, folded the ownership papers into a brown envelope, and placed them in the top drawer of my nightstand. I had no intention of moving out. They wanted me forgotten? Now they would learn what it feels like to be left behind. The next Sunday, Tom arrived 15 minutes late for his scheduled visit and was stopped at the front desk. The receptionist smiled politely. "I'm sorry, Mr. Meyer. The new visiting policy allows only 10 minutes per guest, by appointment only." He blinked. "Since when?" The receptionist nodded toward the updated sign on the wall. "New administration's decision." Tom looked around, confused. "Who's the new administration?" The receptionist glanced back at me as I watched from the hallway, hidden in plain sight. "Confidential," she said with a smile. Tom didn't call for days after his visit was cut short. No text, no voicemail, not even one of his usual shallow just checking in messages. But I wasn't surprised. That's how he operated. If something couldn't be used to his benefit, it was ignored. And I, now that I was no longer useful, had clearly become a non-priority. It had taken me longer than I care to admit to realize that. The following week, a memo went out to all staff. Rosefield Manor was under new ownership. The staff would retain their jobs. All administrative decisions would remain internal. The holding company I used kept my name far away from the paperwork. On paper, I was still just another resident in room 14B, but I knew everything that happened now. Mr. Collins, the facility director, handled the transition with caution. He was a measured man, observant, sharp. I could tell he suspected who was behind the purchase, but he never said anything. What mattered is that I watched how he treated the other residents, not just me. The quiet ones, the slow ones, the ones who couldn't speak clearly anymore. And he was respectful, patient. That's why I didn't remove him. Instead, I requested a meeting with him through a note slipped under his office door. I didn't sign it. I simply wrote, "If you're as competent as you appear to be, you'll want to speak with the new owner. Room 14B, Thursday, 3 p.m. He showed up exactly on time, knocked once, and stepped in quietly. "Ma'am?" he said, nodding. "I had a feeling. I didn't waste time. I'm not here to fire anyone, not unless they give me a reason." "Understood. And I'm not interested in public drama. I want this place to improve, not collapse." He looked relieved. "I appreciate that." We spoke for 20 minutes. I gave him instructions on how I wanted things to change. Gradually, silently, efficiently. More physical therapy hours, better food, a recreation budget, and limits on family visits when residents are being emotionally neglected or manipulated. He didn't ask questions. He just took notes. "I'll take care of it," he said. And he did. Within 2 weeks, the food improved. We had fresh fruit at breakfast and real coffee, not that powdered stuff. A new physical therapist came on Mondays and Fridays. One of the older men who had barely walked in months was moving more freely by the end of the second week. No one suspected me. I still played the role of quiet Mrs. Meyer, who kept to herself and folded her napkins after each meal. Then Sunday came. Tom showed up again, this time 15 minutes early, with Lena and the boys. He was wearing that same forced smile, like everything was fine. He brought a lukewarm tray of macaroni and cheese in a disposable container and set it on the table like it was a gift. "Hi, Ma," he said. "How's it going?" I smiled softly, the way I used to when he was 7 and came home with a bad report card, hoping I'd overlook it. "Good to see you, Tom. Thank you for the food." Lena didn't sit. She glanced around the visiting room, clearly unimpressed. "The lighting in here is terrible," she said, pulling out her phone and scrolling mid-sentence. "I don't know how you stand it." I said nothing, just watched her scroll. Tom cleared his throat. "So, about the house? I hope you understand. We needed to make some changes. You weren't using it anymore, and..." I nodded. "I know." He seemed relieved that I didn't argue. Lena interrupted. "We're thinking of converting the attic into a home office. Greg wants a space for his gaming stuff." Greg was their teenage son, the one who once told me to stop talking during a family dinner because Grandma's stories are too long. He hadn't said hello when he walked in. He was leaning against the wall playing on his phone. I looked at him. "Still playing that game with the swords?" He shrugged. "Yeah." That was the only word he said to me the entire visit. After 7 minutes, the receptionist entered. "I'm sorry. Visiting hours are limited to 10 minutes now. I'll have to ask you to wrap things up." Tom blinked. 10 minutes? "It's a new policy," she replied. "By ownership request." He looked confused. Angry. "Well," he said, standing up and smoothing his jacket. "We'll come back next week. Maybe for longer." "No," the receptionist said politely. "The limit applies to all visits. 1 10-minute visit per week." "Per family," Lena scoffed. "Is this a prison?" "No, ma'am. It's a licensed care facility with revised protocols." Tom stared at me, like I had something to do with it. I tilted my head slightly and smiled. "Take care, Tom. The macaroni looks delicious." They left without saying goodbye. The next day, Emily came again, this time with a small bag of candy and a folded note. She handed it to me, embarrassed. I wasn't supposed to come. Mom didn't. No. I opened the note later after she left. It was in her handwriting. "I know they don't treat you right, but I do love you. I remember everything. When I have my own house, I want you to come live with me." I folded it back and placed it inside my drawer with the ownership documents. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I called Mr. Collins that afternoon and asked for one more change. "No visitors without appointment," I said, "and all appointments must be approved by me." He didn't flinch. "Understood." That Friday, Tom called, for the first time in weeks. "Mom," he said, "we came to visit and they wouldn't let us in." "I know," I said. "Why?" "I needed more structure." He paused. "You can't just shut us out." "Tom, you already did." There was silence on the line. Then, "I don't get it." "What is this, punishment?" "No," I said calmly. "It's boundaries," Lena called 2 hours later. Left a message. Her voice wasn't friendly anymore. "This is insane, Martha. You've lost your mind. Tom's your son. He's done everything. For you. Everything." I didn't return the call. That weekend, the staff held a movie night. We watched Tootsie in the dining hall. I laughed harder than I had in months. Mr. Collins sat with us. He even brought popcorn. He passed by my chair at the end of the night and murmured, "It's working." I nodded. The next Sunday, Tom didn't come. Neither did Lena or the boys. But I wasn't alone, because now I had a waiting list of other residents wanting to speak to Mrs. Meyer privately, to ask for small favors, better pillows, extra reading lamps, help with a letter to their niece. And I granted every reasonable request. They had taken away my home, but I had built something new, without them, and I wasn't done yet, because the next thing I planned to take from them was the future they thought they controlled. The Sunday after Tom and Lena stopped coming, The silence in the visiting room felt different. It wasn't empty, it was calm. No forced smiles, no passive-aggressive remarks, no trays of reheated leftovers disguised as gestures of love. Just quiet. For the first time since my arrival at Rosefield Manor, I didn't feel watched or measured. I sat by the window with a real cup of coffee. Collins had made sure the staff replaced the powdered packets last week and read the newspaper. Slowly, without interruption. No one barged in late. No one checked their phone while pretending to listen. I had 10 full minutes with myself, and that was better than any visit Tom ever gave me. In the days that followed, something began to change. It wasn't obvious. Not at first. It was in the way the other residents started to pause near my chair after dinner, asking small questions, talking about their families. A few of them confessed things they hadn't told anyone, that their sons only visited on holidays, that their daughters made excuses every week, that sometimes they felt invisible even when someone was holding their hand. I listened. I didn't give advice. I just let them speak. One afternoon, Mr. Collins stopped by my room with a clipboard in hand. "I've got 3 separate requests to move to your floor," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Apparently, room 14B is becoming a point of influence." I didn't smile, just nodded. "Let them move, but not all at once. It'll raise suspicion." He raised an eyebrow. "You're building something." "I'm correcting something," I said. 2 weeks later, the tone of the facility had changed. We started a rotating library system using donated books from a local charity. I quietly funded a monthly delivery through the foundation that technically sponsored community aging programs. No one knew the foundation was managed by the same firm that controlled the holding company that owned Rosefield. Then, I arranged for a volunteer music program. Collins helped with that. His niece played piano and agreed to come once a week. And little by little, the atmosphere shifted. There was laughter in the hallways, even from residents who barely spoke before. A few of them started leaving their doors open again, but I still kept to myself in one specific way. I told no one about the ownership, not even Emily, especially not Emily. She kept visiting on her own, always careful, always sweet. She brought coloring books, cookies, stories from school. Sometimes she'd sit beside me in the garden behind the recreation room and read out loud from whatever book her teacher assigned that week. One afternoon, after finishing a chapter from Charlotte's Web, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Are you sad, Grandma?" I shook my head. "Why would I be? Because they're mean to you. Mom says you're just old now and need to be somewhere safe." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Emily, do you feel safe when you're home?" She blinked. The question caught her off guard. "I guess." "You guess?" She looked down at her shoes. "Sometimes when I say I want to come here, Dad gets mad." "What does he say?" "That I'm being dramatic. And that you're happier here because you have friends your own age." I couldn't stop the small sound that escaped my throat. Not a laugh, not quite anger, just something in between. I placed a hand on hers. "Emily, one day you'll understand the difference between being put somewhere and choosing to be somewhere." She didn't get it. Not fully, but she nodded anyway. That night, I unlocked the small safe I kept in the bottom drawer of my nightstand and took out the second envelope from Mr. Richter's firm. Inside was the legal revision to my estate plan. Everything I owned, every asset, tied to the facility, every holding, would be transferred upon my death to Emily. Not Tom, not Lena, not anyone else. She would be too young to manage it at first. But I made sure the legal guardian of that estate would be someone I chose, Mr. Collins, a man who had proven himself to be decent, observant, and uninterested in recognition. I called him to my room the next day and handed him the document. "Need your signature?" I said. He skimmed the paper, then looked up. "You're serious." "I'm very serious. And what about your son?" He made his choices. He signed it without asking anything else. A few days later, I got a letter from Lena. Typed. No greeting. Just a list of questions. Are you well? Tom says you've cut us out of your life. The kids miss you. Please don't make this about money. We've always taken care of you. I folded the letter once and threw it into the trash without reading the rest. 3 days after that, Tom called again. Ma, what's going on? Lena's upset. You won't return her messages. The boys want to visit. They're not on the schedule, I said. I'm your son. And I'm still alive. He was quiet. Then, is this because we sold the house? You said you understood. I let the silence do the work. Finally, he sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, Tom. You made it hard. I'm just making it clear. After I hung up, I stared out the window, the same one that faced the parking lot, the one where I had watched them drive away so casually that first week. Now I watched volunteers unload new furniture, replacements for the rusted chairs and cracked tables in the lounge. Every piece was paid for by the facility's discretionary fund, which I had quietly increased through redirected income from rental property Tom never knew existed. When he sold my house, he thought he took everything. He didn't even realize I had more than one. And now I had something even more valuable: control. I wasn't trying to hurt him, but I wasn't going to protect him either, especially not from himself. And I had one more decision to make. It involved the annual family visitation event. Every October, Rosefield hosted a family picnic, an outdoor gathering with tables, music, catered food, and speeches from staff. I told Collins I wanted the event expanded. Make it a full day, I said. Invite the community. Use it as a platform to show what this place has become. Nodded. And your family? They'll receive a formal invitation, the same as everyone else. I drafted the invitation myself. Rosefield Family Celebration Day, presented by the Rosefield Advancement Fund in partnership with the Senior Equity Council, at the bottom, in small but visible print, hosted by M. Meyer, resident representative I had. Collins sent the invitation to Tom's address by courier, and I waited. 3 days later, Lena replied by email. Thank you for the invitation. We'll be attending. Please let us know if there will be seating for extended family. Of course there would be. Plenty of seating, but not at my table, because for the first time in years I was setting it myself. The morning of Rosefield Family Celebration Day, I woke up earlier than usual. I didn't need to. There was nothing required of me, but I wanted to see the preparations with my own eyes. From my window, I could already see the staff setting up folding tables and white canopies in the courtyard. 2 young volunteers from the local high school were laying out red and white checkered tablecloths. Mr. Collins supervised quietly near the main entrance, clipboard in hand, always 5 steps ahead of everyone. Breakfast came late that day. The kitchen was overwhelmed, but no one complained. There was a quiet sense of anticipation among the residents. People were getting their hair brushed, their best cardigans buttoned, their walkers polished. Even Mrs. Fletcher, who barely left her room anymore, asked for lipstick. I dressed simply. Gray slacks, a clean blouse, and the gold necklace Henry gave me on our 15th anniversary. Nothing flashy, just enough to remind myself that I hadn't always been invisible. At 11 a.m., the guests started arriving. First came the quiet families, the ones who always showed up, daughters who actually returned calls, grandchildren who didn't need bribes. They brought cookies, cards, old photo albums. You could always tell who came out of love and who came out of obligation. And then came the Myers. Tom arrived in a new car, an SUV I hadn't seen before. Silver, spotless, probably leased. He stepped out in slacks and a polo shirt, sunglasses hanging from the collar like an accessory. Lena wore a fitted beige dress and heels that were impractical for grass. She smiled the moment she spotted a camera. Their sons trailed behind, both on their phones. Emily came last, walking quietly, holding a small box wrapped in paper. Tom spotted me as he walked up the path. His smile was automatic. There she is, he said, as if we'd just run into each other at a grocery store. "Looking good, Ma." Lena kissed my cheek. "You must be proud. This whole setup looks amazing. We had no idea the facility had grown so much." I nodded once. Things have changed. We walked toward the courtyard, together. I noticed Tom looking around at the banners, the new landscaping, the professional catering staff unloading trays of warm food. "This looks expensive," he muttered. "It's an investment," I said. Lena laughed lightly. "Well, whoever's bankrolling this place now knows what they're doing." They didn't know. Not yet. We reached the main tent where the event was set to begin. Each table had a name card. Families were being directed by staff and volunteers. I watched carefully as one of the aides guided Tom and his group toward a table near the back. He frowned. "Excuse me, my mother's right there. Shouldn't we sit with her?" The volunteer checked her list. "I'm sorry, Mr. Meyer. This table is reserved for family members of the residents only. Seating was arranged based on confirmation forms and seniority." Lena stepped forward. "We're family." The volunteer looked again. "Yes, your name is listed here. You've been assigned table 6, and my mother is she's hosting at the head table." Lena's mouth opened slightly, then shut. Tom glanced at me, then at the volunteer. "Is this some kind of mistake?" I stepped in. "No, Tom." "It's not." He stared at me. "You're hosting?" "Yes. I thought this was just a facility picnic." "It used to be. I restructured it." He blinked, confused. "You restructured it?" Before I could answer, Mr. Collins approached with a microphone in hand. "Mrs. Meyer," he said, "we're ready to begin." I nodded and walked toward the podium. The sun was directly overhead, and the courtyard was filled with residents, staff, volunteers, and their families. It was quiet enough to hear the flags rustling in the breeze. "Good afternoon," I said into the microphone. Some people clapped. "I want to thank you all for being here today. Rosefield Manor has changed a lot in the past few months. We've added new programs, new staff, new partnerships. But the most important change isn't on paper. It's how we treat the people who live here. With dignity, with time, with presence." Tom crossed his arms from his seat at table 6. Lena didn't. "Look up." The boys were already bored. "We've also created new rules. Rules about how families interact with residents, about what qualifies as engagement, about what doesn't." There were murmurs. Some heads turned, and to those who might find these rules inconvenient, I want to remind you, this is not your home. This is ours. Silence followed. I stepped away from the podium and sat at the head table, where 4 other residents and their families joined me. Mr. Collins gave me a nod. Emily walked up quietly and placed the wrapped box in my lap. "It's for you," she said. I opened it slowly. Inside was a framed drawing, a house with a garden, 2 chairs, and a figure with white hair sitting beside a child. "You said I'd understand one day," she whispered. "I think I'm starting to." I placed the frame beside my plate and looked at her. "Thank you, Emily." She looked over at her parents. "Can I sit here instead of with them?" I nodded. "You already are." Tom didn't approach me again that day. Neither did Lena. When the event ended, they left without saying goodbye. But it didn't matter. They had come to remind me of what I lost. Instead, they saw what I had built, and they were no longer part of it. 3 days after the family celebration. "Day?" Tom called. Not a text, not a voicemail. An actual call. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom?" he started. "We need to talk." I stayed silent. "I've been thinking," he continued. "Something's going on, and I deserve to know what it is." Still, I said nothing. "Lena's upset," he added. "She says you embarrassed us. You humiliated us in front of the whole facility." That's what he took from it. Humiliation, not reflection, not realization, just public discomfort. He kept going. First the shortened visits, then not letting us sit with you, and this whole thing where you're suddenly at the center of everything there. It's like, you're not just a resident anymore. Finally, I replied, "That's because I'm not." He paused. "What does that mean?" "I'm the owner." The silence on the line stretched longer than I expected. Then came a sharp laugh, half nervous, half dismissive. "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" "I bought Rosefield, Tom. I own the facility." "That's not possible." "It is. I used money from a private account, one you never knew about." More silence. I could almost hear him recalculating everything he thought he understood about my life. "That doesn't make any sense. Why would you buy this place?" "Because I was discarded here like a bag of groceries," I said. "And because I wanted to make sure no one else went through that." He didn't respond. I waited. "You bought it? Behind our backs?" "You didn't ask what I wanted, Tom. You decided for me. So, yes, I did the same." He sounded breathless. "What are you trying to do? Punish us?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself, and I'm giving something better to people who still treat others with respect." He lowered his voice. This is insane. You're using your money to cut us out." "No, I'm using my money to cut myself out." Then I ended the call. Later that day, Mr. Collins brought a letter to my room. It was from Lena. Again. This one handwritten. "Martha, we were shocked by the news. We had no idea you had access to that kind of money. Tom and I always assumed everything went toward the house, the bills, the hospital stays. If you had shared this with us, we could have helped you manage it. We could have ensured it didn't go to waste on something like an old care home. We're your family. We were just trying to do what's best for you. But it seems you've decided we're the problem. If you continue down this road, we'll have no choice but to reassess our involvement with your care moving forward." I folded the letter and placed it on my nightstand. That line, "We'll reassess our involvement," lingered in my mind. They were never involved. They showed up late. They dropped off leftovers. They treated me like a burden. Now that I had something of value again, they wanted in. But it was too late. The following Saturday, Emily arrived with her school backpack and a list of questions. She sat at the end of my bed, swinging her feet, her face serious. "Grandma," she said, "are you really the boss here now?" "Yes." "Like, the one who makes the rules?" "Yes." She looked down at her paper. "Did you buy this place because of what happened with Dad?" "No. I bought it because I could, and because no one else would." She bit her lip. "Do you still love Dad?" I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, "Yes, but I don't trust him." She nodded slowly, as if that made perfect sense. "Are you going to give everything to me when you die?" That one hit harder than I expected. I looked at her. 10 years old, wiser than most adults I knew. "I'm planning to," I said. "Unless you grow up to be like them." She looked up. "I won't." "Then yes," I said. "Everything I have will go to you." She nodded, folded her paper, and zipped her backpack. Before leaving, she turned back to me and whispered, "Can I tell my teacher about you? She always says powerful women should be studied." I paused. "What exactly would you say?" "That my grandma was put in a home and then bought it." I let out the smallest laugh I'd allowed myself in weeks. "Tell her I said hello." After she left, I called Mr. Richter. "I want to finalize the trust," I said. He confirmed the documents were ready. "The assets are all in Emily's name, triggered upon your passing, or if you become medically unable to make decisions. You're listed as sole trustee. Secondary trustee remains Collins." "Good," I said. "Make sure Tom and Lena can't touch a cent." "They can't. Not without a court battle, and even then they'll lose." I signed the last batch of documents 3 days later. The following week, I held a closed meeting with the staff. It was brief. I told them the new budget for next quarter would include raises for the CNAs and weekend coverage. Mr. Collins explained, "The adjustments to scheduling and equipment." No one asked where the money came from. They didn't need to. The staff had seen enough of my weekly meetings with contractors, delivery reps, foundation partners, and suppliers to know where the power had shifted. They just didn't ask, and I respected them more for it. That Sunday, Tom didn't show up. But Lena did. She came alone. She waited in the lobby for almost an hour before requesting to see me. Mr. Collins called to ask if I'd receive her. I said yes. She entered my room like someone arriving for a job interview. Polite, stiff, cautious. She didn't sit, I just came to say. We didn't mean for things to get like this. I nodded. We were trying to make your life easier. The fall. The confusion. You didn't seem able to keep up anymore. I was in pain. That's not the same as incapable. She glanced down. You didn't tell us about the other money. And you didn't tell me you were selling my home. Silence. She took a step closer. So what now? You shut us out forever? No. You shut yourselves out. I just stopped opening the door. She looked around the room, the fresh flowers, the new furniture, the framed drawing from Emily. This doesn't have to stay this way. I agree, I said. That's why I've already moved on. She didn't reply. She just nodded and left. The door clicked softly behind her. I didn't watch her go, because I wasn't focused on who was leaving anymore. I was focused on who was coming back, and soon it would be time to show them just how much they had lost. The following month, the silence from Tom and Lena was louder than any of their phone calls had ever been. There were no texts, no surprise visits, not even a card, not even from the boys, not even from Lena, who had always made a show of keeping up appearances. They were gone. And I kept working. Every Thursday, I reviewed monthly reports from Collins and the accountant. I signed off on schedules, repairs, and invoices. We brought in 2 new nurses to reduce overnight stress. The residents responded well to the music program, so I approved funding for a small art studio and instructor. We hosted a holiday crafts event, and 6 local schools sent students to participate. The staff morale improved. Complaints dropped. A waiting list formed. I watched all of it unfold from room 14B. By the end of winter, I'd become the unofficial face of Rosefield. But I never made a speech again. I didn't want credit. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to know that I hadn't wasted the last years of my life waiting for scraps from people who only saw me as an obligation. Then in March, Emily came alone again. She had a permission slip in her backpack. I want to bring my class here, she said, for our volunteer project. We're supposed to do community hours. You don't have to pick this place just because of me. She shook her head. I want to. It's not just about you. I handed the slip to Collins, and 2 weeks later, 25 fifth graders were in the courtyard helping plant flowers. One of the residents cried. Another hadn't spoken a full sentence in weeks, but gave instructions on how to space the soil. Emily led the group like she had done it before. Later, I watched her help clean up. Her hands were dirty, her jeans were stained. She smiled through all of it. I called her over after everyone left. I'm proud of you, I said. She leaned her chin on my shoulder. I'm proud of you too. Then came the letter. It was postmarked 2 days prior, sent from Tom and Lena's. Address inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, just a paragraph. Due to recent financial challenges, we're selling the SUV. We're also in the process of downsizing. The house is too much for us now. We're asking, politely, if there's any way you might be willing to reconsider the estate arrangement. The family would benefit greatly. We regret how things have unfolded. I read it twice. They weren't asking to rebuild. They weren't apologizing. They weren't even pretending to want me back in their lives. They just wanted what I had. I didn't respond. Instead, I contacted Mr. Richter and told him to move forward with the final distribution draft. The paperwork had been sitting, ready for execution. I want it locked in, I said. He didn't ask why. The next week, I had Collins bring in a notary. In less than 20 minutes, it was official. Everything I owned, liquid, real estate, intellectual, and otherwise, was placed an irrevocable trust in Emily's name. Upon my death, she would gain full access. Until then, she would remain the beneficiary of its growth, including a fund created specifically for her education and health care. Tom and Lena would receive nothing. 2 weeks later, they found out. I don't know how. Maybe someone at the bank slipped. Maybe it was Emily who said something without realizing the weight of it. Tom showed up unannounced. Collins informed me he was in the lobby. Does he have an appointment? I asked. No. Then tell him he can leave a message. Collins nodded. Already done. He's not leaving. I sighed and walked to the main hallway where the windows gave me a direct view of the reception desk. Tom was pacing, frustrated. He spotted me through the glass. He raised his hand. I didn't wave. I just looked at him and waited. He opened the door. Can we talk? Are you here as a visitor? He hesitated. I'm here as your son. Then the answer is no. You're not on the list. He exhaled. You don't have to do this. We're family. No, Tom, I said, calm and direct. Family doesn't abandon someone because it's more convenient, and they don't ask for money after disappearing. He stepped forward. So that's it? You're just cutting us out forever? No, I said again. You already did that. You just assumed there would be a check at the end. His jaw tightened. This isn't fair. It's not meant to be. Then I turned around and walked back down the hallway. Collins followed up with a security escort. Tom didn't resist. He just left. I returned to my room and took out the letter Emily had written to me months earlier, the one where she said she wanted me to live with her someday. I placed it beside the new document from Mr. Richter. 2 papers. One was a child's promise. The other was mine. That evening, Collins brought me a bottle of sparkling juice to celebrate. No staff ever talks about it, he said, but we've all seen what you've done here. I didn't do it for thanks. No, that's why it worked. We toasted quietly in my room. Outside, the courtyard lights turned on. The new benches were full. Residents were laughing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone who had been left behind. I felt like someone who had finished what she started. When I went to bed that night, I slept without waking, because I knew something simple and undeniable. I hadn't just survived what they did to me. I outgrew it.